Hello, I'm Frank Hagan, and I am a professor of sociology and criminal justice at Mercyhurst College in Erie, Pennsylvania. And I'd like to tell you a little bit today about my book, uh, which is entitled Intro to Criminology Theory, Methods, and Criminal Behavior, seventh edition. This is produced by Sage Publishing Company in Thousand Oaks, California. I'd like to tell you a little bit about the book today and a little bit about myself and my interest in this field. I first became interested in the field of criminology when I was an undergraduate and took a course from a man by the name of Dan Koenig. Dan Koenig was hardly any older than us, the people he was teaching at the time. However, he was a Chicago native. He a Notre Dame grad. He later would get his PhD in Soch at the University of Illinois and taught most of his career at the University of Victoria, British Columbia, until his very untimely death of cancer at a very young age. Dan Koenig was an inspiration to not just me, but others in the class, and he was always one that took a personal interest in his former students. Also in that class, we had the textbook, Sutherland and Cressy's Principles of Criminology, which was one of the best-selling criminology textbooks ever. And I think Sutherland's writings, inspired and influenced me as well. I think other things certainly had an impact. I grew up on the lower north side of Pittsburgh, and I think was able to see up close the daily drama of heroes and villains and the impact of crime on people. And also, to tell you a little bit about this later, when I was in graduate school, I lived downstairs of, unknowingly, a hitman for one of the mobs at the time, and I have more to say about this shortly. I think if you are taking a course in criminology, a number of you might be majoring in sociology or criminal justice or criminology or related fields. And I think you know that it's a very interesting field. It's a field that is very competitive in terms of job opportunities. Many of my former students have done very, very well, moving on to become professors, wardens, chiefs of police, heads of agencies, federal, state, local agencies, what have you. I think it's a very competitive field and a very interesting field. Even if you are not going to major in the field, I think that a course in criminology has a very viable impact upon us living in a democratic society. If we were to look at even a year or two ago, the near collapse of our economy due to a lot of white-collar crimes and scandals on Wall Street and others certainly indicates the dramatic impact that these types of crimes can have. I think on an everyday basis, the potential or possibility of being a victim of crime can severely impact upon our view of the world, our ability to make use of our cities, and our just lifestyle in general. And certainly, we can look at crime as having an international and global impact that we must take into account as well. There are a number of features of the book that I take great pride in, and I hope that you will find interesting. I tried to make it interesting to students. And just to mention a few, one of the areas that I have a box or a crime file to speak to is the area of presidential scandal and crime. And what precipitated this was a few years ago, during the Clinton impeachment, I received a number of phone calls from all over the world asking me to comment on, well, how does this crime compare to other presidential scandals and wrongdoing? And there really wasn't much research on that. So I did my own research, and I came up with my own sort of lists of crime and scandal by presidents. I ended up with two lists. The first list would be political crime and scandal, economic, financial, and the other was personal and sexual scandals. Political scandals, heading the list there was Richard Nixon and Watergate, perhaps the granddaddy of all the other political scandals. But quickly following on his heels was Ronald Reagan in the Iran-Contra affair, as well as people like, and are on everybody's list usually, Warren Harding in the Teapot Dome scandal, as well as U.S. Grant in the Crédit Mobilier affair, which is the name of a bank and had to do with the railroads. Also on that list were, added more recently, George W. Bush and Lyndon Johnson. George W. Bush for perhaps misleading us regarding the war in Iraq, which caused the loss of many American lives and wounded and billions of dollars in national treasure, as well as Lyndon Johnson and the Gulf of Tonkin affair, which involved us getting into a major buildup in Vietnam, which had the same type of impact. On the other end of the scale were sexual scandals, and by far the leading president there was John Kennedy. Some would say the Playboy president. And here comes Clinton. Clinton comes in perhaps a distant second with many of his shenanigans, which go way back to the time that he was governor of Arkansas, as well as all the way up to the Monica Lewinsky affair. People like Lyndon Johnson appear on both lists, as does Warren Harding. Warren Harding, for example, had an affair with a 17-year-old girl, had a child with a 17-year-old girl, had sexual activity with her in the Oval Office, and things that it wasn't just yesterday that these things occurred. Another area that might be of interest to you, I looked at espionage and spying and came up with my own typology of spies. And I've updated this most recently, and I think you'd find it interesting. Up until 2000, the general theme was this, that spying or espionage has moved from being predominantly politically motivated, ideologically motivated, such as the Rosenbergs, the atom bomb spies who were devoted communists, to mercenary spies, people who just do it for the money. Aldrich Ames, the biggest CIA spy, would certainly fit there. But once we move into the 21st century, everything changes. And it's almost like a pendular shift takes place, in which we are now back to political motivations for spies. The first 10 of this century that we have information on were predominantly motivated by dual loyalties. They had loyalties back to their home country, many of them being Islamic countries, as well as loyalties to the United States. And so the espionage activity raises a dilemma for us, because we need many of these people who speak the languages and know these cultures, particularly where Al-Qaeda might be operating. But on the other hand, we are changing the nature of vetting these people and accepting people who perhaps in the past we would not have